Is it okay if I start? Do I have to?
Sure.
Okay. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm happy you are all here on this session on the role of the universities. My name is Karen Maaks. I'm rector of the University of Amsterdam in the Netherlands. I have an exquisite panel here. I'd like to welcome Minister Hayashi, who is the Minister of Education, Culture, Sports, Science and Technology. So,
thank you for saying all.
Of Japan. I also like to welcome Professor Kutsela, who is the President of ETH in Zurich, Professor Yamagiwa, President of the Kyoto University here in Japan, and the Chairman of the Agency for Science, Technology and Research from Singapore. And the idea is that we get a debate with all of you. We will first, each of us will give a short introduction in a limited time, and then we will open the discussion to all of you. And I look forward to have the discussion, then the debate with the panel members. Just first as an introduction, we do have to keep in mind, especially in these times, that the university is the place where academic freedom is fostered and where scientists can meet and discuss freely over borders in an international setting. And it is essential, at least, that all policymakers in all countries respect this, and by really enabling the free motion of people and by giving sufficient autonomy to the universities. We need that because we have three main objectives, three main tasks. First one is education. Second one is research, and the third one is innovation. Our focus has been on the driver, our research. It has driven us into excellence over the last 50 years, and that has really helped also to bring innovation to our research and society. And one of the things that we want to debate also is what is excellence in view of a society which is changing dramatically. There's two challenges, actually. One of the challenges is to do more interdisciplinary research. There's bottlenecks that we have to overcome to do that. We have gone some way, but still we need to go further. There's a difference in paradigms in the different research cultures, especially between science and social sciences and humanities. We have to overcome that. The structure of the university usually does not help. And there's another change, because the research that we have now leads really to a change in our society. It leads to complexity. So we do need more complexity research, new tools and new narratives to deal with that. But another real thing that we have to look into is our public legitimacy. I mean, we live also in times of fake news. We live in times where we have to reach out more to society and also reach out or make sure we provide at least insight in the coming societal challenges. Do we have to involve citizens? Can we do that? Citizen science becomes more and more important to engage also the public or to engage the public in setting up research programs, as has been done in my country. And how, again, does it refer to the excellence that we used to have and the excellence that we want to have in the future? How does that relate our goals and our goals altogether? Of course, as I said, we need a lot of innovation, co-creation for actually, in my point of view, for better fundamental research. It's not very often the innovation is seen as like a way to get away of the fundamental curiosity-driven research. Actually, my point of view is that innovation should really bring, in the end, better fundamental research as well. And it is a central role, therefore, for the university. The university should be actually the place where this co-creation starts. And one of the reasons is, of course, because of the research, but also because all the disciplines are there. And for innovation, we do have also to involve all the disciplines in research. Innovation should be responsible innovation, and actually in just the debate that we had in one of the sessions, which was really very interesting, one of the things that came up is how can we stay close to our own humanity regarding all the innovation that is taking place right now? How can we define a new context? But maybe the biggest challenges we have in education, of course, in my experience, and that can be different, and I like to hear that, in my experience, the interdisciplinarity is growing a lot in education. New programs, new curricula with different viewing angles, and to my pleasure, it attracts a large number of students. But then the idea is also, how can we make sure that this new education is also a source of new research? This is something we are tackling tackling at this moment. But then the biggest challenge is internationalization. And I do know that many universities, many of you, have changed to, for instance, the English language for some curricula to attract and host students from all countries all over the world. But actually, there is a dimension that I would like to discuss with the panel and with you, whether we also approach, with this approach, can also deliver new or make sure that we also teach or enable to have new skills. Because our students, of course, are the future citizens, and the international scene, the international skill set will be important. I read a book by Dominique Moisy, who is the political scientist and an author of the book, The Geopolitics of the Emotion. And actually he writes and shows how our main challenge in an international world is, and I quote, the absorption of new influences, the absorption of new ideas, and the collective discovery in an international setting. So it is important to learn the emotions of other cultures. And I think, as a university, this might also be a challenge to make sure that as again Moisy says, the emotional borders that will be more important than geographical borders are also part of the skill set that we give our future students. With that introduction, I would like to introduce the panel. I have the honor to have next to me Minister Hayashi, who is the Minister of Japan. I already, and I'll give him now the word, and then later we will go to the other speaker. Please, Minister.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you everybody to join this meeting. I'm Yoshimasa Hayashi, the Minister of Education, Culture, Sports, Science and Technology. So thank you for saying all of things again. Japan's post-war history has been one of the catching up with the advanced countries by absorbing various systems from the West. This went on as we arose from the ashes of war, went through a long period of high economic growth, which was stymied by the oil shocks, and then enjoyed a period of stable growth again, which was again locked by the bursting of Japanese bubble economy. That's what happened in 20th century. And Japan is now facing a great turning point. as we head toward the creation of a super smart society led by innovations in technologies like artificial intelligence AI, while at the same time Japanese people are living longer than ever, like our Prime Minister mentioned this morning. So this past summer, the Council for Designing a 100-Year Life Society was launched under the leadership of Prime Minister Abe. The aim of the Council is to revolutionize human resources development as we approach an era when more and more people will live for 100 years. We want to create a nation that is rich in opportunities that will enable everyone to become dynamically engaged. As Vice Chairman of that Council, I am responsible for bringing together the many diverse views for realizing this aim into a unified, coherent concept. In order to respond to this coming new era, we have to deepen discussion on how each and every individual can survive and thrive in this society, what kind of capabilities and skills they need for this, and on the other hand, what kind of human resources are needed to lead the realization of a desirable society. So there's twofold. These are urgent questions that require well thought out answers. The strength of a nation's universities equals the strength of the nation itself. Japanese society is placing increasingly greater expectations on our universities and institutions of higher education. From now, I would like to speak about the efforts of our ministry, MEXT, is carrying out for the reform of university to respond to the new era and for harnessing the power of universities to create science and technology innovations. Japan is experiencing rapid aging and decreasing birth rate. The trend in the population of 18-year-old is stalling. In 2005, almost 12 years ago, it was around 1.37 million, but in 2016, last year, it dropped to 1.19 million. There are some estimates that by 2040, it will fall to 0.88 million, around two-thirds the current population. In the coming era of real declines in population, it will be essential to foster ability not only for acquiring new knowledge and skills, but also for practically applying them and identifying and solving problems by ourselves. We must also develop people who can create new goods and services, produce new value for society, and create a truly affluent society while collaborating and cooperating with diverse others as a team. Higher education bears a particularly crucial role as a core facilitator for the creation of innovation and the development of human resources. Our integrated reforms have three core aims. Number one, the improvement of the quality of education and research. Number two, the implementation of systemic reforms for strengthening the foundation of education and research. And number three, the rectification of disparities in access to quality educations. Specifically, our ministry has been establishing a designated national university system that provides support to universities that are conducting outstanding research and education at world-class levels and promoting the WPI program, World Premier International Research Center Initiative, to build globally visible and attractive research centers with high research standards. And improving the environment for the acquisition of practical, recurrent education so that people can receive practical vocational education and continue learning throughout their lives. So 3 stages, education, work, retirement, will be getting to more mixed stages so that you can go back and forth from the workforce to the learning places. And then studying the possibilities for collaboration and integration among public and private universities and strengthening the management of universities through the excellent leadership of university presidents. Through these efforts, our ministry has been advancing substantial university reforms. And on the science and technology side, this plays a vital role as a driving force for the creation of innovation. Oh, 6 minutes. A few more minutes, please. And it can also be said that there are increasing expectations on science and technology to find solutions to various problems facing us domestically and globally. To activate innovation and stimulate positive economic cycle, the government is going forward increasing governmental investment in R&D, aiming at the benchmark of 1% of GDP, seeking to triple the amount of investment to universities and national research institutes from private sectors by 2025 over the level in 2014, and promoting R&D both in public and private sector while encouraging R&D investment from the private sector. So the fostering of human resources who will carry forward science and technology innovation is of course essential. Our ministry is fostering and securing creative young researchers and promoting their activities at diverse places in society, as well as actively advancing the appointment of female researchers and excellent researchers from around the world and expanding opportunities for their activities. Finally, I hope that we will have frank exchange of views at this STS forum beginning today, and this will greatly help us introduce the new technologies and wisdom from everybody here to enact it in our policies. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Minister, for your highlighting what is so important in your country and for all the policies that you are discussing here. We will come back to you later. I first now give the floor to Professor Kutsela, please.
Thank you, Karen. Ladies and gentlemen, let me make some remarks on teaching, research, and the role of humanities. And before I start with the subject, let me remind you that in Switzerland we have a very unusual situation, as universities are only one element of the tertiary education system. In fact, in Switzerland we have this dual education system where most of the young generation undergoes a vocational training and only the minority follows an academic track. This allows us to specifically target the demands and the contents of these two tracks, and by that we believe to achieve a higher quality all over the whole system. Let's focus now on the academic track. There we believe that education and research form an inseparable pair, as only by doing research one learns how to cope with unknown situations and then create truly new knowledge. Knowledge, as you know, can be categorized in three main categories. One is the declarative knowledge, the know that, any dates, that the integral of sine is cosine, things like that. Declarative knowledge can be transmitted in a straightforward way using classical and modern approaches. Here technology, e-learning can be very useful, but a cautionary word here, technology should never be misused as a replacement for excellent pedagogy. Cognitive skills then, the know how to do things, are much more difficult to teach. They can be learned best, I believe, using project-based approaches. Participating in cutting-edge research efforts, as I mentioned above, is probably the best way to do that. For less experienced students, competitions on well-defined toy problems have proven at ETH to motivate and educate those students very efficiently. Most difficult, though, are the value frames that we also have to convey to our students. They include ethical and moral questions, but also cultural and societal aspects. It is not sufficient to ask the humanities department to offer an ethics 101 class and then to forget about the rest. The necessary value frames can be taught only, we believe, by intensive and extensive interaction between all disciplines. At ETH, I want to give you an example. We offer seminars that are taught by philosophy professors and physics professors. In these seminars, the professors discuss examples of knowledge creation, and particularly where the knowledge creation went wrong. where humanities went into wrong aspects. And there are abundant examples of theories where humanity believed that nature is described in this way, and then it was very difficult to overcome these beliefs, particularly when authorities started to become important in a field. So one of the most important questions that you have to face in this value frame reference is critical thinking. How do you question the authorities in a constructive way? How can you really make progress? So it's not just the rote learning, it's also the creativity learning that is important. This was one part. The second part I want to make a few remarks is about excellence assessment. We want to have excellent universities, excellent tertiary education systems. We have to assess that. Up to the middle of the 19th century, this was not so important because research basically was carried out by very few individuals who were either wealthy enough to do it on their own or had very wealthy sponsors who allowed that to them. With industrialization, middle of the 19th century, the need arose for a systematic and broad research efforts, which in general were then financed by governments using taxpayers' money. It is clear that in such a situation, where research has become almost a commodity produced by many research professionals, some systematic performance indicators become necessary. Some of our colleagues flatly reject using such quantitative indicators. That is, they want society to give the money to them and to let them alone so that they can decide on an individual basis what to do. This proposal is tantamount to me to the classical idea of communism. Sounds good in theory, doesn't work in practice. Of course, many of the indicators used today, like rankings, impact factors, numbers of publication, competitive funding attracted, are not reliable as well or can be influenced with rigged processes. But the fact that the existing approaches are not good does not lead to the conclusion that performance shouldn't be assessed at all. Here I see, and this is the reason why I bring it up to this audience, here I see a very important role of us, the leaders in this field, to come up with some joint ideas how to assess quality in a relevant, reproducible and fair way. Such approaches are very much needed in order to prepare the conditions for a fair competition that eventually leads to more productive cooperation, with mutual benefits for all parties involved and at the end of the day for society as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Professor Yamagiya.
Thank you for Karen. From Kyoto University. The recent increase in the higher education enrollment ratio and changes in the global labor market have prompted university reform in many countries. To adapt to these trends, universities need at least three categories, three strategies. First, the internationalization of faculty. Second, collaboration with the industrial sector. Third, the enhancement of their financial base. Universities have a responsibility to cultivate and produce the human resources that are needed for the development of global society, while also advancing their own institutional development as centers of knowledge. Currently, my university, Kyoto University, has 3 overseas liaison offices in Heidelberg, Bangkok, and San Diego, and approximately 60 overseas departmental offices and facilities, as well as alumni networks around the world. We use our overseas offices as international hubs to facilitate dynamic talent flow throughout the world by our students and researchers at all stages of their career path. Such initiatives provide ever-expanding opportunities for students and researchers, but on the other hand, a widening gap between rich and poor is causing greater inequality of access to higher education. We must collaborate internationally to increase free access to education, irrespective of nationality, religion, culture, and financial conditions. A fundamental knowledge of the social sciences and humanities and science and technology should be available internationally. Information and communication technology should be used for this purpose. MOOCs are one good example of how this can be achieved. Kyoto University currently offers more than 10 MOOCs in English. They are free of charge, and the courses are taken by many people around the world. We should also try to reduce tuition fees and adjust semester systems in order to stimulate international student mobility. The world university rankings hinder international cooperation by emphasizing competition among universities to acquire international students who pay higher tuition fees. The fundamental mission of Kyoto University is to pursue harmonious coexistence within the world's human and ecological community. International student exchange based on free access to higher education will make a great contribution to achieving that goal. Last year, in order to promote high-level research collaboration both domestically and internationally, we established the Kyoto University Institute for Advanced Study, called QUIES. It is led by 4 internationally renowned distinguished professors, including its director, Professor Shigefumi Mori, a field medalist and president of the International Mathematical Union. The Institute has been collaborating with leading research institutes in other countries to organize a series of QUIES seminars to promote the sharing and exchange of cutting-edge knowledge. Approximately 30% of the researchers working at the Institute come from outside of Japan. Another initiative I would like to talk about is our establishment of on-site laboratories on the campuses of international partner institutions. We are currently planning to implement a system in cooperation with selected overseas partner universities and research institutions, whereby we establish locally managed laboratories on each other's campuses. We expect that the on-site laboratory system will provide us with new avenues for hosting local students in the country of the partner institution, as well as for implementing research collaboration with local companies. We are already in the process of establishing on-site laboratory with IFOM in Milan and VISTEC in Bangkok. As a research-oriented university, Kyoto University aims to develop new interdisciplinary research areas to meet the need of the times and address global-scale issues. We actively collaborate with companies in the private sector to promote R&D. The medical sciences are a particularly important area for our university's industry-academia collaboration. Specifically, our Medical Innovation Center and the Center for iPS Cell Research and Application are implementing collaborative R&D with many pharmaceutical companies to develop new drugs and advance regenerative medicine. In the field of engineering, a striking example is the development of a next-generation storage battery. In collaboration with other institutions and companies such as Toyota, we aim to more than double the driving distance of electric automobiles. In order to promote our collaboration with society, particularly with industries, we plan to reform and strengthen our Office of Society-Academia Collaboration for Innovation, called SASI, based on a model that we call the Kyoto University model. We will thoroughly investigate corporate and market needs and then develop research projects to optimally meet those needs and propose them to companies. In the past decade, Japanese government subsidies for national university operating expenses have been gradually reduced. We are now pushing the Minister Hayashi to increase our annual budget. Because of this, we are required to find new ways to increase self-generated income and to diversify our financial base, such as collecting donations from alumni association networks, promoting the effective use of university assets, and establishing profit-making businesses. As we evolve into a super smart society, which Minister Hayashi is speaking just before me, Research universities are required to foster leaders, scientists, and scholars who will serve academia, industry, the economy, and society with highly developed knowledge and technology. To meet these challenges in a rapidly changing job market, more collaboration with industries and local government is needed. Under increasing influence from the government and the industrial sectors, universities must maintain the autonomy of their management and their academic freedom. To achieve this, we must develop flexible systems to assess universities and their diverse missions, independent of ranking, and we must enhance the capabilities of universities to generate their own funding to support the pursuit of their own unique objectives. That is. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay. Last but not least, Dr. Lim.
Since Singapore independence in 1965, the government has consistently invested in education as an imperative, not a choice. You just have to imagine 700 square kilometers, 5.6 million people, no natural resource. People really is our only resource. That's why investing in education has always been an imperative, not a choice. In higher education sector, the government has always sought to achieve three objectives: the needs of the nation, the aspirations of the people, and very importantly, the quality of the institutions. Universities have played an important role in Singapore's development from third world to what it is today. They have been the bedrock and enabler of social mobility and individual progress, imparting the necessary knowledge, skills, values, and ethos to prepare generations of students for productive roles in the economy and to become engaged and responsible members of society. And the two must go together. It's both the economy and also societal responsibility. In 2004, the Singapore government initiated a transformation of Singapore's public universities into autonomous university, and I think many people have spoken about autonomy. Against the backdrop of an increasingly competitive global university landscape, then the devolution of autonomy was intended to enable the universities to better differentiate themselves and chart their own strategies towards achieving new peaks of excellence, so that the Ministry of Education doesn't have to treat everyone equally and only give everyone the same support. This was followed by a review of the university research sector 1 year later. Following this review, a new academic research funding framework was created with a significant step up in research funding for the autonomous university. 5 research centers of excellence were launched, very much similar to WPI, probably with slightly higher quantum of funding, aimed at building clusters of world-class research capabilities and undergirding an increased level of research intensity in the universities. The changes in the university research landscape have been significant. Research expenditure by Singapore's higher education sector has grown by more than threefold in a decade, from around $500 million in 2005 to over $1.6 billion in 2015. The number of PhD researchers also more than doubled, from 4,600 to over 10,000 in the same period. In the process, the two largest universities, the National University of Singapore, NUS, and Nanyang Technological University, or NTU, have increased their publications in high-impact journals, and not surprisingly, they also rose to become top universities in Asia and, in fact, in the world. The world is changing rapidly, and technological disruption is happening at an unprecedented pace in this digital age. This requires us to continually re-examine the role of the universities. In an era where our children routinely teach themselves how to use touch screens to access information, long before parents or school teachers have taught them how to read and write, the focus of teaching has to move beyond largely knowledge acquisition to become a platform for engagements in order to apply and to deepen what they have learned and all the other associated skills that come with higher education. The capabilities universities need to develop in their graduates must therefore also correspondingly change. In February of this year, the Singapore government released a report by a high-level committee on the future economy, or CFE. Fundamental to the strategies articulated in the report is a shift in focus towards the development of skills mastery, creativity, and innovativeness, and a mindset of lifelong learning in our people. In line with the CFE, our universities are therefore increasingly focusing on real-life and lifelong learning. They are offering modularized programs to strengthen the nexus between skills acquisition and application through better structured and longer internships and entrepreneurship opportunities, among others, to provide the environment for students to gain both depth and breadth in their skill sets. Significantly, many of these programs will be based overseas in some of the most dynamic, innovative and entrepreneurial hubs such as Silicon Valley, Shanghai, Israel, and Munich. And I think this thing about crossing the emotional cultural barrier was also mentioned earlier, especially by the moderator. These new initiatives add to the many opportunities that have already been established to provide international exposure for our students. Singapore Autonomous University are also adopting a new pedagogy to prepare their students to excel in a complex and globalized world. For example, and this is quite a bold vision, by 2020, half of the non-lab courses taught at Nanyang Technological University will be delivered through the flipped classroom model. In a flipped classroom, traditional lectures are completely abandoned. Students will access online course content on their own, at their own time, before class. Class time, instead, is spent on problem-based discussions that stimulate critical thinking and active engagements. The aim is to significantly increase the interactions among the students and engagements with professors or facilitators as part of team-based or project-based learning. Through this process of continual reform and improvement, we hope that our universities will remain relevant and effective in preparing the next generation for a more competitive and rapidly changing digital world. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm very happy, actually, that all of you have emphasized both the economic goals and the societal goals in running a university or running a policy about universities. I would like to open now the session to the questioning. So, is there someone who wants to ask a question at this point in time? Go ahead. Please make yourself, mention your name and your affiliation and then ask the question.
Gary Halliwell, National University of Singapore, and also A-Star. You've all commented on rankings in one way or another. And of course, rankings are good in some ways. They assure people that universities are doing well. I think they're bad in others because they get all types of universities to think that publishing high-quality papers is the thing they should be doing, when for some universities it probably isn't. So I wonder what the panel thinks about rankings.
Very good question. Who would like to take this question?
So my university, Tokyo University, recently ranked down from 39 to 46. So that's not the reason why I'm saying this, but this is one of the index. This is not the only index. So we have to be very, very careful about what is the benchmark inside all those several benchmarks, because those rankings consist of several index inside. So rather than just feel happy or unhappy with the ranking itself, what is our strengthness and what is the weakness? And Japanese universities relatively getting a lower point for internationalities, like how many foreign professors coming and how many internationally jointly doing research or internationally the thesis is referred. So that's why, rather than just seeing ranking itself, how to make the weaker point stronger and how to make the stronger point more stronger will be the important things to do.
So, but that means, if I just make a short intervention, that means that a ranking gives one number, but it should be counterbalanced with a strong policy of the university or of the institute itself. Is that what you like?
No, sure. That's what I want to say.
Okay. Professor Kudzela, you want to add on that?
Just 3 points. Number one, rankings are here to stay. So it would be waste of time to fight them. Number two, rankings should always be used as an early problem indicator, as a monitor. They should not be used as something that tells you all about the university. But if something is moving, something is specifically not on par with the others, you might want to use this information to look more deeper into it and have a real assessment by peers. And thirdly, if you start changing the soul, or if you start changing the strategy of your university so that you become better in rankings, then you will lose sooner or later the identity of your university.
Okay. Oh, everyone wants to comment on that? Yep, go ahead.
Can I go? Yeah. I think that ranking are flattering the diversity of universities and to encourage homogeneity of university in the world. And, you know, innovation should be promoted by the competition among individual scientists, not competition between universities. You know, for example, in my university, after raise of rankings, you know, individual scientists' productivity reduced. It is because many scientists are, you know, contributing to the, you know, to the society and community, and to reduce their own individual scientific activity. That's the better results. So, you know, university ranking should promote innovative activity of individual activity, but the results are not this way, I guess.
I would like to do a small poll here. If I would ask you in which university, if you are involved in university, does it hamper your interdisciplinarity, or does it help your interdisciplinarity? If I say, does it help? Who would say it helps? Sorry? If your ranking is really high, it helps. Yeah, but I mean, sometimes it can also be counterproductive for some things. For instance, it could be counterproductive for interdisciplinarity. I don't know how you feel about that. It depends also what the policy and the identity of your university is. Okay, so here this person says that the rankings help to increase interdisciplinarity. That was a voice here, okay? Are there counter-indications? No? Okay, great.
Yes.
You wanted to add
Yes.
on it, yeah?
I think Barry raised an important observation. It's not about doing away with ranking, and I think President Guzella reinforced that. But the ranking is not necessarily the best instrument for all higher education institutions. Again, in the case of Switzerland and likewise in Singapore, there's a way of thinking about higher education system and not just about university. They are research intensive, and somewhat the ranking reflect, you know, a significant measure of what they do. This is why I think in the case of Switzerland, you talk about academic track, and there's also applied science track. In Singapore, it's very similar. We also have the so-called applied science through polytechnic. But even within the university sector, the mission given to all the universities are not all research intensive. There are those that have a slightly differentiated role. What is important is for the institution to be clear about their mission. I think ranking is just too blunt an instrument for universities without taking into account the nature of each of the university. So we need to be mindful of that.
Other questions? There, behind you.
Mike is coming.
Thank you. Paritat Pantumanjong from Thailand. I would like to, from Panjab Vihat Institute, Thailand, would like to ask Mr. Lim about the flipped classroom. They will say that the flipped classroom, the main obstacle of flipped classroom is the teacher themselves. How NTU engage the teacher to motivate them to use more flipped classroom?
Yes. I think 2 years ago I spoke at a similar row of universities and I highlighted that flipped classroom in theory and in a discussion is a wonderful concept, but the moment you ask university, please do it, you'll find all the right reasons why they will not do it. And this was the same in Singapore. So Singapore academics are not unusual from that point of view. I think demonstration is absolutely critical. We are fortunate. We're very fortunate to have new institutions we are creating. And because they were greenfield approach, we could get very path-breaking leaders who are prepared to take risks and go forward with new approaches. So in the case of NTU, we started a new medical school 7 years ago, partnership between NTU and Imperial College. The moment we started a medical school and they made a mistake of asking me to be a chairman, it was very clear in my mind that it has to be a completely different approach when you have a chance to start a new institution. And by then, Singapore already had a prior experience with Duke NUS Graduate Medical School, which I was involved in starting, and the approach there was also flipped classroom. So we have evidence from a second medical school, so we ported that to the new medical school, and the results were just mind-blowing. So we presented this result to the academics in NTU, and the leadership completely bought into this, and then we went through this exercise of flowing many academics through, and we leave it to the schools to decide how much of them want to commit, how many percentage of the program to flip classroom. But it's really getting very contagious, which is why you see that 50% commitment by 2020. So it's very important to have the experiential demonstration.
Okay. There's a question here.
I am Professor Ramesh Chandra from the University of Delhi. And Delhi University in India is the premier institution having 800,000 students. We have 78 colleges, 86 departments, and departments like chemistry, physics, they have more than 1,200 students. Law, we have 8,000 students. My question is whether the rankings should be connected for funded. Because the government of India says if your ranking is higher, you'll get more funds. If your rank is lower, you'll get less funds. So there is a discrimination that way. By any chance, a state university, because we have 800 universities, and we have 46 national universities, and these Banaras Hindu University, Delhi University, Aligarh University are the 3 oldest universities, and Allahabad University. So by any chance, the Allahabad University doesn't get a good rank in 1 year, the funding will go down. So should we connect funding with the ranking? That is the basic question. I would like that you address this question, whether it should be connected or it should not be connected.
Who would like to take this question?
That would be a very bad idea.
I will respond to the question in a different way. When we gave autonomy to the universities, we put in place 3 additional frameworks. First is policy framework that set very long-term discussion, after discussing the university, the long-term direction. The second one is a performance agreement, and the third one is most critical, quality assurance framework. We don't trust ranking. During the quality assurance framework, the people that we have that spend deep time with the universities are either president emeritus or provosts of top universities around the world. They have a desktop evaluation. They spend 1 week with the universities, and they are prepared to give candid comments. Obviously, there are sessions that they give feedback to the universities, and there are importantly sessions that they give it to the ministry. So the ministry actually never used ranking as any input to funding.
The same situation in our case, that those private sectors ranking is not used for when we calculate those funding. And also maybe if there's a funding from the government, it's going to those universities, but at the same time we are funding the students for lending monies, and some part of our lending money is now you don't have to pay it back. So that ranking could affect the student decision, which universities or which school to go. But so in that regard, that might affect.
Good point.
There's more questions there.
I am from National Autonomous University of Mexico, and I'm also visiting professor at Kyoto University at the moment. I would like to know how can we create a ranking that, instead of being driven by productivity, takes into account the direct or more tangible impact in the benefit of societies?
That's the question.
Who wants to take this? Please.
Okay. University autonomy, we are free, and we must be free to select researchers and teachers. And, we must accelerate researchers' mobility between universities. But rankings affect us to select some kind of quality, and we request some higher, results of the researchers' activity. So we need to take the standard of researchers' review into account of our selection. That is hinder us to select freely the good teachers and researchers for their own mission. So we now thinking about in each department, they should be free to select any researcher and any teachers, irrespective of ranking. So that is our, needed autonomy of university. It is good answer for you? But what do you want to request me to answer?
I think I understand the ranking system. I am part of that ranking system. But the problem is that we are driven by funds, by how many papers, how many funding, and so on. And maybe in each university, also my university is autonomous, and we are free to choose what we want to research on. But the issue is that why are not we universities that are working based on benefit of society? Why the ranking does not take into account those issues that are more important than right?
Okay, I think you make your point very clear, and and I think many in the audience will agree to that. But maybe it's also because some of these things are more difficult to measure. So, but let's leave it like that. And your point is well taken. Are there other questions? There in the back.
Yeah.
You?
I have the microphone.
Ah, okay.
Yeah. So
the one who got the microphone is the boss.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much, because your question is very important for us as a developing country. Yeah. One of the modalities of catching up is not to invent the wheel. It's just good to transfer the knowledge where it has been already produced, or you allow mobility of highly ranked researchers to mentor or to collaborate with those who are now learning to do things. So the problem is that if you want, for example, a UK highly ranked scientist to come to Burkina Faso and spend 3 years grant in looking at local issues, he's not going to be and publishing on our reviews in order to make them raise in impact factors. He is not benefiting from his institutional side. So it's demotivating some kind of collaboration which could benefit of a country. So within the university it's a problem, but between also countries it's a problem. How do you promote collaboration in order to support developing countries, while in the institution of the origin of the researcher, they're not taking into account his contribution to the oversight? So it's a very interesting and very key issue for international collaborations, mostly for those who are skilled and should transfer their knowledge, not for those who are benefiting. But if it does not help for the one who is helping, it won't commit to that. So it's taking into account the contribution, whatever it is, of the scholar is an incentive to be, to continue doing this kind of job, including some issue relating to application of knowledge, or which is not published, but which is good for society.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I saw more questions there. You were first, and then there was a question there later. So this guy, yeah, you're very close. Yeah.
Brian Schmidt, the Australian National University. Getting away from rankings per se, but a broader question that many of us are facing, is that universities have become detached from governments and our societies about the values that they bring to society. That is, I would say, 50 years ago, there was no doubt universities were important to the future of society, and that conversation has eroded in most of our countries. Not all, but most. How do we have that conversation with society about the value and why society should invest in what we do?
I think that's a very important question, and it is a little bit related also to the previous speaker. So I don't know whether one of you wants to take this.
Yeah, relating to the last questions, I think it's depends on what type of education we are talking about. If we have some vocational training or skills to grow rice or developing a village to develop the developing nations, we can send some people to them to teach. It doesn't have to be the Socrates method in 90 minutes free debate in the Harvard, right? So then what do we need to innovate the artificial intelligence? That is the different stories. So I think when we say college or universities, there's so many things inside it. So how to differentiate from one to one, and maybe the top level debating or research or innovations seeking, maybe we need top people together in the teamwork. But the other level of the education, like Yamagiwa sensei said, they can send free on the internet and everybody can get that. Or even we can accept those people, students from abroad, or we can send some technicians to also them. But that cannot be done in those higher education, highly innovative education. Or maybe that's the innovation, science and technology and education at the same time, mixture of those two things. So we can, maybe when we think about policies, we have to differentiate what type of things we are talking about.
Let me give you also a very brief reply, Brian. We academics have neglected the dialogue with society and with politics. It is, of course, you can blame the others, but it is also partly our fault. We need to engage more, even if it's not the most pleasant thing that we can do with politics and society. We have to go out, we have to talk to them, we have to make better clear to them what important message we have to say.
Thank you. There was one last question, because I think we are running almost out of time. But
thanks. Thanks, Chairman. Yvan Berger from Academy de Technology of France. Our everyday life is supported more and more by technological system, huge system, not only internet, electrical system, and so on. And my impression is that in the universities, we don't speak so much from system, from technological system. We are more on discipline. So what do you think in this century, is it still reasonable?
who would like to answer?
So I don't know if I exactly catch your point, but the social science, like law, and also science and technologies, can sometimes has to mix. Because when we see the AI more advanced and when we're getting close to the singularities, how our labor law can apply to those situations. Maybe nobody is employed. Everybody's working for everybody's in an independent manners. So in that sense, not only in the lower the primary schools and all those things to train themselves, we still need to think about what type of the society we need for preparing for those new technology to come, and the software, those technologies are for the society and human beings rather than against society and human beings.
I think with these wise words, we have to end now the session. I would like to thank all the panel members and all of you for the interesting contributions and interesting discussion. Thanks.
Thank you. Very tough questions.
I hope so.
I'm hoping Professor Mori gets a phone call. It was a pleasure meeting you. I'm sure we'll both be right. I go to now we go over
Thank you very much. We will see each other.
Good arrangement.